welcome back to the GCN Racing News Show. Coming up today, it's that time of year. The Giro d'Italia is underway, and after just a couple of stages, the gaps are gaping between the pre-race favourites in the battle for the Maglia Rosa. The Vuelta Femenina concluded on Sunday too, and it was a scrap until the very final metres between the stars. And an Olympic and Paris-Roubaix champion is set for retirement. That and more on this week's Racing News Show. This week in the world of racing, we learnt that taking a bottle is something even the best and most experienced riders occasionally struggle with.
Anami just missing the bottle, looking for one from someone else. 2 bottles missed. Oh, 3 bottles for the world champion.
We also learnt that Tao Geoghegan Hart is always calm.
You look kind of sad. I don't know, maybe you're just tired because it's been a massive effort, as always is in the time trial.
No, neither. I'm just calm, mate. It's stage 1.
And finally, we learnt that the Giro d'Italia fields are looking for a job in Hollywood. Let's begin with the first 3-week race of the season then. Of course, it's the Giro d'Italia. No defending champion on the start line this year, which is actually a common theme at the Giro. Jai Hindley is focused on the 2023 Tour de France, as are the remainder of last year's Giro podium, Richard Carapaz and Mikel Landa. The last time a Giro winner returned to defend their title was when Tom Dumoulin raced to 2nd overall in 2018 after winning the 2017 edition. Instead, the focus was on Remco Evenepoel, who is attempting to become the first Belgian to win the race since Johan de Munt in 1978, and Primož Roglic, the 2 big pre-race favourites. It wasn't a smooth lead-up to the race for Jumbo-Visma though, with no less than 4 riders dropping out of their planned lineup. Tobias Foss and Robert Hessink were confirmed COVID cases. They were set to be replaced by Rowan Dennis and Jos van Emden. Van Emden himself then tested positive for COVID-19 and was replaced by Sam Oomen. And just when you thought they'd taken a good beating, even before a single pedal had been turned, Jan Tratnik was involved in an accident the day prior to the race. And after medical checks, it was judged that he wouldn't be able to start. His replacement, first-year World Tour pro Tom Gloag, called up to his first Grand Tour. He was actually out on a training ride with his phone turned off and almost missed the call-up. Anyway, the riders, including Tom Gloag, rolled down the ramp in Fossa Cesia for a 19-kilometre time trial to start the race. The stage took the riders up the Adriatic coast in the Abruzzo region of Italy. The big question approaching the stage was how much time Remco Evenepoel would take on his main GC rivals, and whether Filippo Ganna could defend his unbeaten record in Giro d'Italia time trials. He'd won 5 out of 5 in his career to this point. The early pace was set by Mads Pedersen of Trek Segafredo, before Brandon McNulty and Jay Vine lowered the benchmark further. Vine is a bit of a wild card at the race for me, I must say. He hasn't pinned a race number on since the UAE Tour in February when he suffered with knee pain. Well, a fine time trial here for Vine crushed any doubts over his fitness. Tao Geoghegan Hart was the first man under 22 minutes before UAE's fine stage continued, with Joao Almeida shaving 10 seconds off the Brits' time. Geraint Thomas put in a decent time too to stay in touch. And so, the final riders readied themselves. Remco set off, followed by Roglic, Stefan Kung and Filippo Ganna. Now that is some quartet. Quickly, it became clear that Remco Evenepoel was on another level. He had passed his Minuteman Dan Hula by the 2nd checkpoint, with only the short climb to the finish left. He crossed the line in 21 minutes and 18 seconds, averaging over 55 kilometers an hour throughout his efforts. Roglic leaked 43 seconds to Evenepoel, while Kung had to settle for an eventual 4th place on the stage, with Ganna 22 seconds back in 2nd place. It really was a sight to behold, I must admit. While I did expect Evenepoel to come firing out of the blocks throughout the first week, the time he put into the likes of Ganna and Kung on a largely flat course was sensational. And well, he already has a handsome GC lead to defend, and with a 35-kilometre time trial approaching in Cesena before the 2nd rest day, he can surely expect to gain more major time on his GC rivals there too. So, Evenepoel in the Maglia Rosa. There was some confusion about the other jerseys though. Brandon McNulty was handed the first Maglia at Zura, the leader of the King of the Mountains classification, by virtue of being the quickest rider up the final section on stage 1. However, he was actually some way slower than Theo Geoghegan-Hart, who was eventually given the blue jersey for the stage, which took the riders from Teramo to San Selvo. The eventual breakaway consisted of 4 riders, with Paul Lepera winning both KOM sprints ahead of countryman Thomas Champion to win the blue jersey. The final kilometres were frantic, and that came to a head with just under 4 kilometres left, with this crash, taking out pre-stage favourite Mads Pedersen and Mark Cavendish. A huge selection of riders were caught behind, and crucially, it was outside the golden 3-kilometre point. So, Jack Haig, Santi Petrago, Hugh Carthy, Rigo Aran, Eddie Dunbar, Jay Vine, Theo Geoghegan-Hart and Thibaut Pinot were among the riders that lost 19 seconds in the GC on a seemingly innocuous GC day. Despite Pedersen and Cavendish's absence, we still had a sprint on our hands. Let's see what happens over on the touchscreen. Here we are then for the finish of stage 2 of the Giro d'Italia in San Selvo. Let's load up the finish of the race and pause it straight away so we can analyse the situation. So, at the head of the race, no Mads Pedersen, no Mark Cavendish. Instead, it's Ramon Sinkelzam at the very front. He's working for his lead-out man, Caden Groves. He's on the wheel. Meanwhile, fighting for his wheel is Jonathan Milan. I want you to keep a very close eye, though, on Fernando Gaviria, the Movistar rider. He's got a tendency of launching very early in sprints so far this season. He won a stage of the Tour of Romandy using this strategy. So, if we watch this play out, you can see Gaviria into the wind very, very early. Same with Caden Groves off his lead-out man's wheel. Meanwhile, Jonathan Milan still tucked in into that slipstream in the perfect position at this point. David Decker for Arkea Samsic, he's going to finish very quickly. And if we play this on, you can see Milan now using that massive power of his in the final 100 metres, flies past Groves, Gaviria fading quickly, and Jonathan Milan taking a stage win on his Grand Tour debut in his first Grand Tour mass sprint. A huge day for Milan. Meanwhile, Mads Pedersen and Mark Cavendish left, wondering what could have been. The Giro d'Italia does of course continue daily, and stage 3, which finishes in Melfi, may or may not have finished by the time you're watching this. One thing's for sure, I am already loving the race. So let us know what you've made of the opening few stages of the Giro in the comments below. That's far from the only racing we've been treated to over the past week though. We've also enjoyed a memorable edition of the Vuelta Femenina. Stage 1 got the race underway with a team time trial. The Vuelta really is doing its best to bring back the TTT back in vogue, isn't it? It was the only Grand Tour in both the women's and men's pelotons to have a team time trial last year. And it was an exciting one too, with Jumbo-Visma edging out Canyon SRAM by a single second, with Anna Henderson claiming the first red jersey. On to stage 2, and it was a flat stage finish along the coastline just east of Murcia. Marianne Vos was hoping to take the Maglia Roja on from her British teammates, and it looks like she'd do just that. Vos closed the gap to late attacker Chloe Dygert, rounded the American, but as she looked behind to confirm she was about to win, DSM fast woman Charlotte Kool swooped around her outside to steal victory. Nonetheless, it was Vos who took the red jersey. Stage 3, and it was those renowned words in the world of cycling, echelons. A hard day in the saddle, and particularly bad day for Trek Segafredo, with none of their riders making the first selection. Sylvia Persico and Kirsten Faulkner also lost time. But at the front, Vos made no mistake this time to defeat Kool, who was second with Dygert third for the second day in a row. The next stage was lit up by hilly terrain in the finale, with the likes of Annemiek van Vleuten on the attack. Her move swiftly closed down by Demi Vollering. They were reeled in though, and Marianne Vos made it 2 in a row. She outsprinted Emma Norsgaard and Marlon Reusser in Guadalajara, donning the red jersey as well. Stage 5 brought about the first uphill finish of the race, the Mirador de Peñas Llanas, which was 5 kilometres at an average of 6.7%. The red jersey Marianne Vos was dropped on the earlier Cat 1 climb, and Niamh Fisher-Black came down after trying to take a bottle from teammate Demi Vollering. She would be absorbed by the chasing group. The group was about 30 seconds ahead as they reached the final climb of the day, but Vollering was too strong and took stage victory and the lead of the race, finishing 3 seconds ahead of Van Vleuten, with Ricarda Bauernfeind riding brilliantly to third place at 9 seconds. So, Demi Vollering entered stage 6 with a mere 5-second lead on Annemiek van Vleuten, and Movistar put the hammer down ahead of the two categorised climbs, distancing the race leader. Van Vleuten then set off with more than 45 kilometres still to go, and only a small selection of riders could stay with the world champion, with Vollering picking off riders behind. Van Vleuten then went for the intermediate sprint and bonus seconds, and the other riders behind hesitated, with only the small-statured Gaia Realini able to follow. There were still more than 20 kilometres left by the top of the final summit, and Vollering had done well to join the chasing group behind, but there was still over a minute to the leading duo. So, it came down to a sprint. Realini came off the wheel of Van Vleuten and both riders dived for the line in a photo finish. But the controversy wasn't over. While the Vollering group crossed the line a minute and 4 seconds down, the 21-year-old Realini was celebrating the first World Tour victory of her career.
Come and sit down, come and sit down. Come on. Proud of you.
But the stage result was then reversed to give Van Vleuten the win, which she was presented with on the podium, before the result was reversed once more, with Realini eventually handed stage honours. So, all of that left Van Vleuten with a lead of 1 minute 11 seconds over Vollering in second, with Realini still outside the top 10 after losing ground in the crosswinds. There was some controversy about the way Movistar attacked though, with Vollering and SD Works saying they were taking a natural break at the time, but Movistar claimed they had planned to attack at that point from the beginning of the stage. All I know for sure is that there was one big final test looming, the infamous Lagos de Covadonga, and it would surely host a battle royale. And that all began when Vollering attacked with 10 kilometres left, which whittled the group down. And then there were 4. Realini, Musique and Van Vleuten following Vollering. Musique was distanced with 7 kilometres to go, and shortly after, Realini suffered a mechanical issue, which she was able to deal with swiftly. So swiftly, in fact, that she was soon on the attack, dropping Van Vleuten. So, the final kilometres were set perfectly. Would Vollering be able to take enough time on Van Vleuten by the top to win the race? Van Vleuten's expression said it all. She was emptying the tank to try to hold red. Vollering distanced Realini into the final kilometre, and the stage win was hers, as she sprinted all the way to the line, not leaving any time on the table. Realini crossed the line to move all the way into third on the GC podium, also taking ownership of the Queen of the Mountains jersey. Behind, Van Vleuten dug deep and crossed the line just under a minute behind Vollering to retain the race lead by a mere 9 seconds. A truly epic edition of La Vuelta, packed with epic rides, tantalising rivalries and its fair share of controversy too. Tell us what you thought in the comments below. We've also had some one-day racing in France. Let's start with the GP Morbihan and with the women's edition. Grace Brown attacked with over 40 kilometres to go, and it was a masterclass from the FDJ Suez rider. She was never seen again. Cedrine Kubiul was the best of the rest in the uphill sprint behind, with Dominika Wolodarczyk in third. The men's race came down to a mass sprint on the same uphill drag. Norwegian champion Rasmus Tiller slingshotted out of the final corner round the outside, as young superstarlet Romain Gregoire did the same on the other side of the road. Still just 20 years old, Gregoire is a rider to keep a very close eye on. But, sadly for him, Arnaud Delis had hidden in the wheel of Tiller well and flew between Tiller and Gregoire to take victory, with Gregoire second and Tiller third. That was then followed by Trobro Leon, which is of course famous for the victor receiving a pig. It's one of my favourite races of the year though, with such a mixture of road surfaces involved. You never know what might happen until the very end. Despite cloudy conditions, the roads, both paved and unpaved, remained dry throughout. Olivier Legac took the bell with 12 kilometres left, but he had only a handful of seconds on the chasers. Despite being one of the fastest riders in the field, Delis attacked out of a corner with 7.4 kilometres remaining, with Eddie Fine coming over the top for Cofidis. So, a group of 7 riders came to the finish together. Delis led things out, but Clement Venturini went early and rounded the final corner at the front. But Giacomo Nizzolo came out of the slipstream to pip Delis to the finish line. Now 34 years old, I for one was delighted to see Nizzolo win for the first time this season. What do we have coming up for you on GCN Plus this week? Obviously, Giro d'Italia coverage continues, with an array of viewing options from the breakaway with Orla and the gang to multiple highlights for even the most time-constricted cycling fan. We also have the Tour of Hungary. That's a 5-day race which starts on Wednesday. Territory restrictions do apply there. That's in addition to the Novara Women's Elite Classic on Wednesday, with the Azulia Women's Tour starting on Friday and concluding on Sunday. Both of those are available to view worldwide. In addition to all of that, we have the first round of the UCI Mountain Bike World Cup in Novo Mesto. That should be very exciting indeed. We'll also have the world of cycling each week. This week, Andy McGrath and Ian Field will be joining Cy Richardson to dissect the Giro, La Vuelta and more. That will be out on Wednesday this week, with the show then moving to Mondays to give you some rest day content over the Giro d'Italia. Also out on GCN Plus this week on the documentary side of things, let me tell you, I've been really looking forward to this one. In 1939, driven by a desire for fame and fortune, English amateur Tommy Godwin cycled a world record 75,065 miles in a single year. He became the fastest person to cycle 100,000 miles, completing the feat in just 500 days. After this epic test of endurance, Tommy had to learn to walk again and uncurl his hands. Ultra-endurance cyclist Mark Beaumont is on a mission to find out more and shine a light on Tommy Godwin's remarkable record. He delves deeper into Tommy's story and finds out if he has the physical and mental stamina to take on Godwin's record. Take a look at this.
In 1939, one extraordinary cyclist smashed a record that would stand for over 75 years.
Trying to imagine what that would have been like.
To many, it's one of the sport's greatest achievements, but also one of the most overlooked.
I want to find out just what it took physically and mentally to be a big mile eater back in the 1930s. It's going to be hard enough without riding a bike that's 2 sizes too small. Trying to eat similar to what Tommy Godwin did. Bread, butter, and here, more bread. I'm a bit broken. It's an amazing story, an utterly amazing story. It's the story of Tommy Godwin's hardest year.
Every time I watch that trailer, it blows my mind just a little bit more. Anyway, in other news, Greg van Avermaet has announced that he'll retire from the sport at the end of the 2023 campaign. The Belgian turns 38 later in May and won the Olympic road race in 2016 and Paris-Roubaix in 2017. And in some sad news, former world champion track cyclist Tony Doyle has passed away at the age of 64. He also later served as the president of British Cycling and was the founding director at the Tour of Britain. Right, that's all we have time for this week. Enjoy your racing, and we'll see you at the same time next week on the Racing News Show.